This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
The champion, welcome, Danny Batten.
Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation, home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 125. We are powered by Violent Money. Please do check out Violent Money TV on YouTube and, of course, Violent Money Academy on all their social media platforms. And don't forget to check out violentmoney.co.uk. Use the code ACE20 to get 20% off their training apparel and clothing ranges. There is lots to see. Check out the first smart gym, of course, in the UK, which is the Violent Money Academy on social media. But we've got lots to discuss today. We're live on YouTube, as always. And if you prefer your podcast in audio form, I should say as well, then this series and all the content produced by A.C.E Podcast Nation available at the Sports Social Podcast Network. So check them out and download plenty of podcasts with some incredible guests. Joining me, as ever, is former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend. It is Mr. Danny Batten, who's had a very eventful couple of days. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. Sign listeners. Yeah, there's lots that's got to be discussed. I went through a lot of things, let's just say, and I had fighters on other events as well, which made it all the more stressful trying to make sure all that runs smoothly. But like I say, we could discuss that a little bit more as we get going.
Indeed, it's been a busy week. So now we are joined this week by another top guest from the world of combat sports, and fresh off his interesting finish to his fight last night on Cage Warriors 138, which finished as a majority draw versus Scott Pedersen. It is Cage Warriors Featherweight, Gervonta Tanasa. How are you, my friend?
All good. How are you guys?
Yeah,
Doing good, George.
Looking forward to having a chat.
Yeah, me too, man.
So obviously, George, we've got to start with last night. It was going pretty well, I think, for you. I think from memory, I think he was probably going in your favor, the fight overall. It was quite a close fight, but I thought you were probably heading for a victory with the judges. And then for people who didn't see it, your opponent, Scott Pedersen, was kind of I think he was stumbled or he was sort of keeled over, and he, as you lined up a knee, it looked as if you were waiting for him to try and take you down. He placed his hand on the mat, and you kneed him in the head at the exact moment that he did, which is obviously an illegal strike, which led to a 2-point deduction, wasn't it, rather than a disqualification, which I think, I'm sure you'll be able to tell me, but I think that's because it was unintentional. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't expect it. I didn't do it on purpose. Which one? I say yes. Or it was happening, and for me, it was two rounds. Very close. I was thinking I'm win that 2 rounds anyway. I was confident. I controlling. I scoring the rounds but I can't believe. Still, I didn't sleep all night. Yeah, just thinking today, thinking what I do wrong. But actually, was that knee was connected.
Yeah, and I mean, at first glance, I thought you had missed Scott, and it had just kind of gone to the side of his head. But it was only when you saw the replay that you caught him just above the eye.
Yeah, because I
like,
didn't.
Yeah. I mean, it must be disappointing for you because obviously, you've done the camp, you've put in the hard work, it's your sort of full Cage Warriors debut, if you like, and you've also, you've started the first couple of rounds well as well, also. So, how difficult was it to control your frustration, in the immediate moments after that? Because it's got to be one of them where you're really annoyed.
Yeah, after that was before was a big storm for me, to be honest. Was big pressure in my shoulder. Quite many time in Colchester, but I didn't have that pressure like how was for last fight. I can't sleep for last few days. Yeah, just I was feeling just like so annoying. I don't know why, but the pressure was unbelievable. I try to stay focused. I try to lose my weight, and I try to relax, but I didn't. Relax, and I think that was so tense in that fight.
Yeah, and I think Danny, sorry, George, go on.
No, you go. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, Danny, like these big fights, particularly if you're in your kind of your hometown and stuff like that, there is a big bit of pressure there. There is that, as well as the physical side of the sport. We've talked about it a lot, like the mental side of it, and it can lead to more tension, to nerves, to things like that, particularly in the build-up. It was an unfortunate way to end the fight, and I think Scott also wouldn't have wanted the fight to have ended that way. Danny, what did you make of it as a spectator?
Yeah. Scott Patterson, someone that we've obviously spoke to and got to know. It's frustrating because he had moments where he was doing well, and there was moments when it didn't go so well, which is all commendable for George's performance. He reversed the takedown attempt, which was really skillful to do. Yeah, very, very skillful to do. It was partly because Scott was trying to execute it poorly, didn't press his hips in towards the ankle, so he gave space to be spun around. But for every mistake, a mistake is only capitalized upon if you know what to do and you feel that it's wrong and you know what to do to counter it. And George done really well to counter it. Scott just seems to be struggling to just get it all to come to play. It's something that he admitted to us when we was talking, and I did briefly have a few words with him after the fight, making sure he was okay. And he just said, I'm just struggling to make it click. I can imagine what's happening is he's sparring with very, very good level guys, as we know, in that camp. And he's probably making good account of himself, but struggling to get the pressure performance up in the cage real time. But, it will happen for him. He's still a young lad. It just takes a little time to acclimatize to it. Maybe he's letting the pressure get too much for him. And as for George, fighting, in an area where you're sort of like representing your area and you have a big crowd there supporting to you, there's obviously expectations as well. That either works two ways, and it really depends on the person. It either gives you that extra support or it can put you under extra pressure. It can go either or way. And some people, it doesn't matter where or when they fight. For me, I was always, as soon as a cage door closes, doesn't matter where their location is, I'm in a cage and I'm with my opponent that I studied and I prepared for. So for me, it wasn't really like that, but for others, it can be. And that can be part of the equation on what your kind of performance is going to be. But I was quite impressed with what I saw from you, George. There was a couple of times, maybe you can clarify on this. Maybe the pressure was getting to you, because a couple of times you was looking a little gassed. Although you carried on and continued to perform very well, you had to dig kind of deep. There was a couple of times you were taking some deep breaths in some of those wrestling exchanges. But like I say, it didn't seem to affect your performances because you kept coming out predominantly on top. But was you feeling a little bit fatigued in there at times? No.
Yeah, no, I didn't feel fatigue or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just I feel, to be honest, I feel great. Yeah, I feel unbelievable. I don't think before I was thinking my cardio is not good, my cardio is well, but I can do. And in this fight, what I say, I leave everything a little bit for last time, just maybe for knock him out, or maybe for try to finish him, and I control him all 2 rounds. But I didn't feel like I feel like the weight cut was easy for me, and I didn't feel fatigue. I feel unbelievable, my body, but just on one small mistake I do again. I was so lazy, no lazy,
Yeah.
just supposed to be 20% more active.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it may have been a case because when I was watching it, I didn't know whether it was a case of you almost like sighing because or whether this was taking a deep breath. It may have been because you was frustrated that you perhaps missed an opportunity, where he level changed on you and was pushing close to your hips up against the phage, and maybe it is a little bit of expression of frustration. Because, like I say, it did look strange. I'm like, oh, is he showing that he's a little bit gassed there? But you carried on performing really, really well physically. So maybe it was a little look of expression of like, oh, I know I could have stopped that.
Yeah, nah, just what I'm saying. Nah, just I feel amazing. Just gas, perfect. I take my time there. I was, but in the second time I didn't want to make any. But I was even when he put the pressure, I keep the control, still counting, still make points.
Yeah.
I didn't feel in. I didn't just.
Yeah.
And I know I will be more dangerous. But I will be, if I will put 20% extra work, 30% extra work, I will be more danger. I will be
right.
I will be very competitive for
Sure.
all. Maybe in the future, dropping to 135. Maybe.
Interesting. George, like, how do you think we'll run that back? Do you think you'll end up running that fight back with Scott?
For me, to be honest, I don't think he will take the fight because he will know he will lose the fight.
Okay, interesting.
Will not be the same. Will not be the same result. Will be bad. Will be more bad because I'm more confident. I get more confident. I get more strong mentality. I will be different. This one for me was like I didn't rush. I didn't push enough to don't make any bad mistake. But if I will do the next one, I know what I have to do. I know how I will beat him, and I will beat him very bad.
Okay, cool.
I will guess him in first 2 rounds. What I do this one, this one I guess him out. I didn't do much, but I guessed him out. I feel him in the last round. He didn't have any gas, and he was struggling.
So you'd feel confident in a rematch. You think you'd be more confident going into it than this one?
If it's July, anytime, because I want to be active anytime, I will take the rematch. Him will be cool. If he will be available and he want to do cage wars, if cage wars want to do, we do again.
How did you get into MMA and combat sports and stuff? Like, how old were you and what was that?
I'm 27 now. I came here when I was 20. Okay. I do, because I come from injury. Actually, I'm injured my nose, and I was out from wrestling like 3 years. I didn't do any from 17 to 20. I didn't do any sport. I didn't do nothing. And just I come here, I start wrestling slowly. I get my nose, I repair my nose. I get like few surgery, and I go slowly by wrestling. I go to British. I win British wrestling championship. I go back in Romania. I win like few medal in national championship. And few friends they do MMA. They do MMA, and we start together. Like Emrason Mez. We train together. We train in Legion Wrestling before, and we started wrestling together. And I joined like a fan in MMA. I didn't do nothing professional like for like 3 years.
Okay.
Even when I joined PKK, I do just fun. I didn't feel like, oh, I would have a big career or I will be big guy in MMA where I will fight. I never have a dream to fight Cage Warriors or something like that. It was for fun. But yeah, when the lockdown started, I tried. Yeah, when I start pro, I start train very hard, and it's big difference than amateur. Like it's a big difference, like how I was in amateur, how I am in pro now. And last year I start training very hard, just very hard, and I still focus and focus and focus, and hope I will be best in one day, and I will be. Yeah,
It's so it's quite interesting. Like you came into it quite late on from a from an age point of view, and you obviously had that big break as well.
Yeah, big break. What big break in lockdown anyway. Just waste one year and a half. We didn't fight, but I have my wrestling base.
Yeah.
I wrestling from when I was 13.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
Yeah,
So
in high level, just high level wrestling. Yeah, and I think I have an advantage in MMA. Just to learn, hands, learn how to boxing. You'll learn. Wrestling is different. It's more hard to learn. Wrestling, BJJ take more time, and I think I have a good advantage.
yeah, I think Danny, do you find that with your students and your fighters that like learning sort of striking and things like that is sometimes a bit easier to pick up than the wrestling and the grappling and things like this, VJJ and things which go into making a complete MMA fighter?
Yeah, again, that's one of those ones that can come down to the individual. People just take to things better. But generally, I think striking at a decent level is actually a little harder for someone that perhaps hasn't had a background in striking in the first place to try to obtain that really good level. I mean, it does come together. It depends on your coaches and how much time they're willing to invest, of course. But I think the touching arts, such as wrestling and grappling even more so, I think the more connected you are, the more touch orientated it is, I think the easier it is to pick it up. So I'd initially say the grappling arts are the easiest to pick up. Okay. I say the next most difficult is the wrestling. And I think the most difficult aspect to try to get someone to be of a really high level is the striking arts, because they're disconnected. The only point you have connection is when you're either striking or blocking. So there's a lot of things to play into factors. You imagine there's two people, you've got footwork to take into play, you've got range, fast twitch to low twitch muscle fibers, lots of different angles. Very, very difficult thing to sort of like acquire the skills for. A lot of judgment needed. And that takes a lot of time in the cage, a lot of time in the ring, a lot of time with coaches breaking it down. But I think physically though, I think wrestling's the most physical of all those arts. I mean, doing judo or wrestling is physically very, very, very difficult. And I think if you're proficient in that range, you really understand something about conditioning. I think that's definitely where wrestlers and judokas have an edge. Once it's in their realm, they're very, very efficient there, and very, very physical there. And that might be what George was saying about Scott. He felt that he was beginning to fatigue and tire. George is more proficient there. It's just his realm. And if someone is more proficient, it's going to really show through. It really is exasperating when someone can be efficient in that area.
Yeah, I thought there was one point where Scott tried to take down George, and kind of George, like we touched on it a little bit earlier, where he just kind of flipped or reversed it, if you like, in sort of almost in midair, and it looked, spectacular, obviously. But like, I said to my father-in-law as we were watching it, the skill level that it takes to be able to pull that off, and the speed of thought as well. Would that come from like a wrestling background more than anything? Would it?
Who's that to?
You.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't straight 101 wrestling. There's 101 wrestling that was very, very much a cage orientated wrestle. Scott was trying to capitalize that George was using a knee shield, and with a knee shield where he had long enough reach to still control the hips. For me, Scott should have driven his right hip into the ankle to try to get the ankle close as he can to the bum, so he could create some lift and some turn. But he didn't do that. He tried to lift him too square with the hips, and he sort of went around in a circle. And the problem with that is you go around in a circle, all George has to do is keep that momentum. So as you fall, you're going to fall on top. He just was missing some elements to try to take advantage of that grab, because George was not in a great position there. He was having to use a knee shield to try to increase the space between them, and Scott just went about it wrong. And like I say, it's all very well knowing when someone makes a mistake, but the true skill is, they're making a mistake in this attempt at a takedown. How can I punish him for that escape? And that's the level difference that you was witnessing there. George didn't have to think it; he felt it. It was instinctual. You could see that. I mean, it's not many people know how to recover from a takedown attempt and then be the ones that actually end up on top. And that was the difference in skill level right there. And George, I would think, was giving away a fair bit of natural size to Scott as well. Scott's a big guy. I mean, his stats show 5'10". He's bigger than 5'10", I can tell you. He's pretty big at the weight. And George, I met you briefly. I really think you could be absolutely devastating at 135. And I'd be really excited to see you fight down at that weight. I think you could be a real interesting fighter in the mix at that weight. Not to say you can't make something of yourself in the featherweights, but I just think, I think that could be where it's at for you. I don't know whether you would agree with that, but I think you'd be a scary prospect for anyone in that division.
Yeah, just even Jack say the same things. Jack say that even we talked yesterday about before fight, and Jack told me, "Hey, mate, it's time for have a proper diet. It's time to do 145 because I have to lose like 8 pounds. Just 8 or 9 pounds one day before.
Yeah,
I do proper diet, to be honest, just only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Jack told me, look, if you have a good proper diet for 2 months, you'll be able to compete in 135. I know because I do 35. I've been wrestling 61 kilo before, but I have proper diet before. Just I'm a little bit lazy, not lazy, but I like to eat.
Yeah,
and I'm thinking the same. I'm thinking to maybe 1-2 more fight, maybe try to do 140.
Do a catch weight. Yeah, that would be good approach.
Let's see how I feel, and if I feel good, I'll go drop down to 135.
Interesting.
And I think it will be a monster.
I agree. Yeah.
It'd be a scary thought, like, because you could see the skill sets on show last night. That was clear for everyone to see. But like you said, like, Scott is quite big for that weight as well, isn't he? And I think you put George down into the 135, and he's that big guy.
Yeah, George would be a bigger individual down at that weight, and I just think with those wrestling skills and being in that weight division, I think there's a big problem to try to overcome that advantage that he would bring in that weight division. Like I say, I don't want to say that you couldn't be effective at featherweight. I just think you'll be more so effective, in my personal opinion. If I was coaching, I'd be encouraging you to go down to that 135. And then if, as you get those successes, you have the chance to grow naturally into the featherweights as well. So you could have a really lengthy career, be successful over 2 weights. That would be how I'd be planning out. But obviously, you're not my fighter, so I can't give you that guidance. We can only talk in hindsight. But it seems that you and your coach have got the right idea, or the same idea, should we just say?
We have to stay there for last 2 years. No idea, just Jack say, look, you have to do it. Okay, next one. We move for next one. I'm the smaller guy in every fight. I'm the smaller one.
Yeah.
Like last one was Bonder, was the same, like 5'10".
Yeah.
Massive. And I'm 5'7".
Right.
And Scott, the same, just big body. But I feel good. I feel strong. I feel more strong than them in every fight.
Yeah.
That's quite fascinating as well, isn't it? That you're quite often the smaller fighter, but you feel stronger, in the contact and during the fight. It's because you wouldn't expect that all the time when you're the smaller of the two competitors. But like, where do if you take the kind of weight, the division out of it, George, like where are you looking to push your career now over the next sort of year or two?
Just to be one of the best in Europe. Everyone just looking for to go in top level, UFC, Bellator, PFL, one championship. But we tried maybe UFC 100%. But we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, hope we'll get contract. I think so. I want contract Cage Warriors. But I don't know what's happening for next fight. Just if any fight come next month, I will take it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I will take it. I will do tomorrow just to go gym. I go back in the gym. I rest today. Tomorrow I will be in the gym, and I will take. And if Cagers will give us contract, I will join in Cagers, and I want to be next year. I want to be Cagers champ.
Yeah,
good stuff. Do you know? It's interesting. I watched last night with my father-in-law, he's a casual MMA fan. Just he really probably only watches the big shows when I'm there, and but he does enjoy it. And like, he was kind of really enjoying the fights last night, and he really just enjoying but he was surprised at the standard of every fighter. Like, the level is so high in Cage Warriors at the moment, and I think sometimes it's difficult, isn't it? Because there's no easy fights. That there's no But I spoke to obviously I spoke to Lloyd Germain, the boxer, a couple of weeks back in the studio, and he obviously won the Welsh title last night. And I spoke to James Lilly this week in the studio, which is out next week, and obviously he's doing some really good things in bare knuckle boxing or bare knuckle FC boxing now. And he was saying that one of the reasons he went from being a professional boxer to then doing some MMA and then ending up with the bare knuckle boxing is when he was a professional at like 19 in boxing, it was really difficult to get fights. And if you did get a fight, you went there and you had to travel. And often if the fight went to the judge, it would be, the hometown guy would get it. And you felt very demoralized as a young fighter. But in boxing, they kind of pad your records out, don't they, when they turn professional early on? You kind of don't get that in Europe and the UK with the MMA. Like, you are fighting in Cage Warriors, you're fighting top level guys and guys who have got all round skill sets that can trouble you. Like, how difficult is that, Danny, when you're trying to match up a fighter in the early sort of stages of their career or their professional career, when they've just turned pro and you're looking at Cage Warriors and every fight is hard. Every fight is a challenge. There's no kind of easy route. Not easy route, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no way to pad you.
Yeah. We actually discuss it amongst all coaches along with the student. And we either pick a particular show where we perhaps have seen certain fighters, or you get to know which camps are producing the real top tier fighters and which ones are not. You know, normally when we go up against, say, someone like London Shoot, you know, you're always going to get a physically fit, someone of a tough mindset, and they kind of got solid skills everywhere. And so we'll put the appropriately confident student up against those sort of teams. There are some that I feel like need a little bit of development. You know, they're showing a lot of potential. It's about knowing your fighter, isn't it? And we're steering them towards a show or towards a camp that's perhaps not so renowned as being, you know, producing top tier competitors. You know, it's one of those ones where when you're coaching a fighter, you don't want them to have, you know, really easy wins where it ain't going to gain them anything. And likewise, you don't want to be breaking their soul too early so they can never fulfill their full potential. There is a little bit of skill in picking the right type of fights. So in saying that, you've got to know your fighter personally. You've got to know the other coaches that are investing their opinion on such issues. And then of course, you've got to be making a little study of what other fight camps and other fighters what they're doing or what they're not doing to try to match up your opponent to get the best out of it. You know, we had a very, very good weekend. I had 3 fighters fighting up in Birmingham on an amateur event. We knocked up 3 wins there. Tom won with his pro fight. You know, real tough fight. And then we had 2 K1 fighters fighting on another event, again coming up with 2 wins. So we knocked up a nice little 6-0. But every one of those fights, they were not foregone conclusions. They were all tough fights. You know, that's all part of the skill. This is why, you know, I really take my hats off to Ian Dean, because, you know, he's got to deal with not only trying to match these fights, but dealing with the attitudes of who the fighters do and don't want to fight, and the coaches. You know, he's having to deal with a lot of people. You know, it ain't just a case of, oh yeah, I want him to fight him to fight it, and her to fight her, and everyone's nodding saying, yeah, of course, Ian. He's having to confer backwards and forwards and problem solve a lot of issues. Yeah, sorry, it's a bit of a long-winded answer.
No,
it's an interesting question. It was a really interesting question, and one that I think people think, oh, we're just matching whoever with whoever. No, it don't quite work like that. It's got to be done to maximize the experience for the fighter to grow at the maximum speed and get the most out of it.
Yeah, Ian Dean's doing just a wild job over this last sort of 2-3 year period. It's just been insane. Like
he's been doing it
mark very, very much. Do you know what I mean?
No, not at all. I've known Ian Dean now for 20 years. I mean, he was matching my fights back up in 2003, 2004. It took a long, long time ago. And he was doing a stellar job back then. And he's just matured and got even better at it, being that he's had 2 decades in it and stuck with Cage Warriors as well. So, you know, for the fact that he's been there as it's transitioned from one owner to another and he's still there, goes to show that he must be doing his job very, very well. It must be easy to work with because no one's getting rid of him. And yeah, he just perhaps don't get the recognition he perhaps deserve. I think in the inner circles with fighters and us on the podcast, we're obviously quite more invested into knowing who's who. Everyone knows who's the deal, you know, who's the real deal in Cage Warriors regards to matchmaking. And obviously, you know, that's fine, but it really should be pushed out there what job he's doing. It can't be easy. And I nearly give him a heart attack when I was warming up in the cage, just feeling at the cage with Tom Mearns, and I see Ian Dean sat there on his laptop working away, and I peered out and said to him, oh, I'm thinking I'm making a comeback. And it made his eyebrows round, but then he had that little smirk of like, yeah, right, and he didn't take me seriously. It's kind of disappointing, really.
Yeah, so
I could do it. Now you're 49 years old. I could do it.
He's challenging you. Challenging you, Dan.
You know what? I wouldn't want to if I got to face people like George at featherweight. And thank you. I'll stay retired.
It won't be like when you were fighting, when everyone was dodging you and stuff. Now they're all game for it now, mate. You'd have to.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. We did discuss this. I mean, my level as it was back then, being ranked number 1 in Europe, I'll be struggling to beat top rank amateurs as it is now. I'll be a drop in the ocean of the level as it is now. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, I like to think I've evolved. That's why, you know, I like to think we're still producing top tier fighters in our own right. So obviously I've evolved since I've retired, but my skill level as it was, as I could attain it back then, you know, I wouldn't be getting anywhere near people like George and so on and so forth. I just wouldn't. There's
The
too many
game's
holes in the
changed,
game.
haven't it? The game has changed.
Yeah, it's a different era.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as well.
this is where you can't really compare eras. People do. We joke about it with Jordan, being that he's got my title that I used to have, 16, 17 years before him. And they're like, who would win? And, of course, Jordan would annihilate me as I was back then. But I do say, if I was his age now, I'll still beat him. And the nice thing is I can hide behind the fact that we can never prove otherwise. So I'll sit comfortable with my decision on that one.
until you make your comeback and then Ian Dean matches you against Jordan. Yeah, then we'll know.
No, the thing is, I wouldn't be making featherweight, not unless I have some serious liposuction.
So, all right, Dan, I do want to have a quick chat about. Obviously, you mentioned you had Tom fighting this week with Cage Warriors. Didn't make weight, but then had a very, very good performance. And I think his last couple of fights have been really close fights, but he's looked really good. Like you can see a drastic improvement in him in the last probably 12 to 18 months, I think. But I'm interested in what you think as his coach, and also kind of getting a little bit of an insight into what you've been through this week. Because when I saw that Tom had missed weight, my first thought was, Danny's going to be so annoyed.
I was not happy.
Oh, with one
because
wait, with 1 pound or?
He was 0.6 off of the weight. Yeah, but he had cut 10 kilos.
Yeah,
he was 76. This is what happened. If you don't mind the long-winded discussion of what happened, this is how it happened. He's picked me up from home because we both live in Milton Keynes. We've driven an hour and 50 minutes to get to the destination of the hotel. And this is Tom all over. This is Tom through and through. He's so frustrating to work with. He's absolutely draining. But I love the kid. I've known him since he's 15. He's what now, 28, 29 now? I've known him a fair old bit of while. He's like a little brother to me. I'll care for him in that way. And so disorganized, this kid. We get there, we get all our bags out of the car, and he goes, you must have my weight cut bag, the food bag. I'm like, no, Tom, I've got the 3 bags that I organise. I haven't got yours. And he goes, no, you must have. We're checking all the bags. He's got all his weight cut gear. So we go to the hotel. He's making a few phone calls to see if someone will bring the stuff. Obviously, they can't because we got fighters fighting all over the place. Yeah, there's no one left available. So he's having to drive all the way back again. That's put us behind on the weight cut. It just
How far
was
is
not a good
that
start.
from Colchester to Milton Keynes?
I'm not too sure the actual distance. Not that bad. Not that bad in terms of actual miles distance, but it ain't easy. You've got to go on the M25 and M1, and I think it's the A12.
It just kind of knocked you back in time and stuff.
Well, yeah, it lost us 3.5 hours. It was by the time he come back to me, and so we started weight cutting late. We had to do it all through the night, and 10 kilos. I mean, that's just too much. It's just too much. So the issue I have, I keep on telling him off in class, what's your weight now? And he'll say, this weight. I said, you need to be lighter than that, Tom. He'll start his water load, and for many people perhaps won't understand, but you take your water load, you should be losing 1 kilo a day, even though you're water loading. You shouldn't be gaining weight. He starts water loading, his weight's going up and up and up, which goes to show he hasn't got his dietary things in order. And what it was, I think, he had a really comfortable weight cut the previous fight, and I think he thought he would sit comfortable and he'd be able to, I just deal with it on weight cut day. I'll just take, and I'm like, I've done 10 kilos twice in my career. It don't make you feel very well. And he suffered. He really suffered. And I was in a situation where I didn't know whether to either pull him out for the fight or just to say, look, we're going to miss weight. Let's just explain to them and see whether the fight's going to go ahead. It literally got to that point. But we weighed in. He had 0.9 to lose. He had 2 hours to lose it. We got him down to 0.6. And Luke Shanks, obviously a former training partner for Tom and being under my guidance for a good number of years of his early part of his career. We've got a great relationship still with Luke. And Luke said, look, Tom, I don't think you should do this extra weight. Your health's more important. So I was stuck between trying to push him to the finish line to make this weight, because I find it embarrassing that I can't get my student to make weight. But then I had to think, well, look, you know, his health is important to me.
Yeah.
You know, he is like this little brother to me that I don't want him to, you know, to make himself proper unwell, you know, and we have heard of tragedies with the weight cut. And I said, Tom, go in the sauna. If you're not feeling it, come out, let us know, and let's just see what happens there, or let's just say we can't make weight. He come out saying, look, Dan, I can't do it. We sorted it out with Cage Wars. The fight was still going to go ahead. The opponent was happy to go ahead. It was 0.6 of a pound. So, you know, and you know, if people don't know, you lose 60% of your fight purse. And I believe the fight purse goes to the opponent. But fair play to the opponent. He's still accepted the fight. So hats off to him. And the fight's gone ahead. But yeah, yes, a great performance from Tom, beating someone that's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Tom dealt with him, I think, fairly well on the grappling. Had great striking on the feet, the pair of them, to be honest. It was a good performance. But yeah, you're right. It has been tainted by this weight cut issue that never sits comfortable for me. And as he won the fight and we walk into the medical room, I said, right, you little bastard. I said, now I'm going to kick your ass as we walk there, all the way for putting me through that stress. You're never letting you do it again. And I've told him I will not allow him to fight unless I'm monitoring his weight each week and he's where the target should be. I'm not going through that again. It took something out of me. It really did. It made me question being a coach. It really did. It was that bad.
See, it's hard to kind of, like, that shocks me that it was not that it was that stressful, because I can only, you know, I've heard enough stories from different fighters about how stressful it is and how difficult it is, and I've seen videos as well. But it surprises me that, like, it got to you that much, because you've been around the block and you know the ins and outs of everything with it. But that just goes to show, like, how frustrated you were, how stressed you were.
Yeah. Well, it got worse.
Fair play to you, mate, as well, because there's coaches around the world who would have only been thinking about themselves, and they would have been pushing him to go beyond his health. You know, we all know there's people around like that around the world, and I think at the end of the day, when it came down to it, you went with his health rather than maybe. I let it be his call. I said, Tom, if you feel you can't do it, that just has to be. You have to let me know how you're feeling. He said, I've hit the wall, Dan. I can't. I won't do this again. That's all he said to me. And I'm like, okay, it looks like a lesson's been learnt here. Let's sort it out with Cage Wars, let them know we're going to miss weight and deal with the consequences. But it actually got worse from their side. And, you know, I wouldn't normally want to share this with anyone, but we're on a podcast, we're on a platform where, you know, it will open the eyes of what some of these fighters have to go through. And that was that when he started trying to rehabilitate and take on the fluids, he was throwing up. We couldn't get water down him. He just kept throwing it up. It looked like a horror movie. It was like that. It wasn't just like a little bit of water. It was like a fire hydrant. It was like, and I was thinking, Tom, I'm going to see how you go for the next 2 hours. If you don't start taking on water, I can't let you fight. Cannot let you fight. But he ended up being fine. Once he got over that first hour, his body started taking on the liquids. He started to eat a little bit, started looking right as well. He goes, I feel great, Dan. Slept all the way through the night, woke up the next day, and was back up at 76 kilos. So he went in, big old boy. And he was actually fine. I think the only real concern was that I was thinking if he gets clobbered, you know, is that dehydration? Because obviously you can rehydrate your body in 24 hours, but it takes 4 days to rehydrate your brain. And this was a concern to me. And he did get wobbled a couple of times in the fight, which I think was due to the massive dehydration deficit that he put himself through. But, you know, Tom actually got hit a whole lot less than he normally does. Normally he's in these absolute barn burners, isn't he? This is
so, you know, he pulled it off, and
wars, didn't he?
You know, luckily the opponent he fought, although potentially very, very dangerous, hugely inexperienced compared to Tom. And I think the whole nerves really got to his opponent. He started to look a little fatigued. There was a lot of things that fell in place to allow Tom to have got away with it. I wouldn't have fancied his chances, honestly, with someone with a massive amount of experience in there. You know, it could have been a very different discussion we're having today. But I don't want to take anything away. Tom still did amazing. I mean, all that he went through to perform the way he did, hats off to him. We all know he's a tough character. But like I say to Tom, I'm not in it to see how tough you are. I'm in it to see you win with as little effort and as little damage as possible. So, look, lessons learned. I'm sure that this will be the last time we'll be having a discussion like this with Tom. And if not, I will not back him in a fight. Simple as that. I will just say, because I won't entertain him going up to lightweight. He's too small. I just no. I'm not putting up with it.
So here's the thing, right? There's a couple of reasons why I kind of wanted to, let you express yourself and tell the story of that situation. One of them is because we had Luke on you, and we gave him a bit of a grilling, and I asked him, we asked him questions and about the missed weight, and because it was a problem, he ended up not being the flyweight champion because he missed weight. We were quite critical of him, both when we talked about it initially, but also when we talked about it with him. Because one thing that me and you will always do is we'll always be honest. We'll ask honest questions, but we'll give honest opinions. And that's why I felt it was important for you and the podcast, for us generally, to talk about that. But also, I think it's important to discuss it because the fighters put themselves through this rough, I don't think people, unless you like a hardcore fan, sometimes people don't understand the strain that fighters put on their body when they're, to lose the weight. And then, like you say, if you can't get that water back on you, it's brutal. And that's why I felt like it was important when we discussed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, from a safety point of view, I wondered if you were going to touch it, and you did, was the last, I think, 2 or 3 fights before this fight, Tom has been in absolute wars for the full 3 rounds. They've just been hell for leather, back to back, 3 rounds of just striking. And if you haven't got that water back in you, and you, like you say, it takes, was it 4 days for the brain to take that water back on? You don't really want to be having that type of fight. But that's the type of fight that Tom often has, which makes it problematic. And for you as a coach, but also as his friend and as someone who cares about what happens to him, you're kind of stuck in the middle of that situation. So I was kind of interested in your take from it afterwards as well, because it seems like you are very much of the opinion we ain't doing that again. So you either
I will not back him if he's anywhere near needing to cut 10 kilos. It's just, to me, it's not happening. I won't back him. You'd have to take someone else down. He won't be representing our gym. I just can't. I can't go backing someone that's going to potentially really harm their health. And like I say, not to have to touch on it, but there have been tragedies in the sport. We need to keep them. The MMA is a beautiful sport. There's a reason why it's been the fastest growing combat sport for how many years in a row now, and there's a good reason. It's a beautiful sport. It's one of the most complete. Well, it is the most complete combat sport out there. And it's an advocate for all martial arts. I don't want to say that it's overruling any other combat sport. It's all of them mixed into one, I suppose, is the best way to perhaps look at it. It's an advocate of all the martial arts into one. It is a beautiful game. It's strategical, tactical. You've got to be a tactician. You've got to, you've got to be as strong, but as light as you can be. There's so many factors to making a supreme athlete. And I'm intrigued by it. It's a beautiful, beautiful sport. But, having fatalities in the sport could potentially take this sport away from us, particularly as we haven't got a proper governing body here in the UK yet. You have to get sanctioned through the governments. I mean, that is not an easy process. Judo's all well and good. It's got great backing. Boxing is all well and good. It's got great backing. It's got great governing body. MMA still haven't got that. So we don't have that safety harness. They could ban our sport. We recently did cover last year on the podcast. I'll say recently, we're 6 months into this year, aren't we? That France, I think, was it last December? I think it was. I might be losing touch here. That only just got MMA legalized. Could you imagine it being taken away from us? I mean, it'd just be devastating.
When we had Graham,
so we got to keep it safe.
Yeah.
Oh, Graham Boylan. Do you know what? It surprised me. And how passionate he was about the safety of the fighters. and how important safe MMA was. And he really knocked things into perspective and changed my opinion on things.
Well, do you
really
know what?
did.
You know, I mentioned James Lilly, which the show comes out next week, and James made a really phenomenal point on this kind of subject. Was he said why you can't? So the reason he lost his boxing license initially was because he got so fed up of waiting for a fight in boxing, and he had grown up with John Phillips, and so they offered him an MMA fight, and he took it because he wanted to fight. He was young, blah blah blah. And then if you fight in MMA, the boxing board will ban you, take your license away. But what at the moment, because there's no communication between boxing and MMA and kickboxing, technically a fighter could get knocked out 1 week in boxing in a white collar show, say, and then go and fight in MMA. And because there's no communication between the two kind of bodies, organizations.
That's not good.
So, but it doesn't take much for the safe MMA or the government to set up some sort of board between boxing and kickboxing and MMA just to try and monitor that kind of stuff. George, we haven't heard from you for a while. Danny's been rabbiting on.
Sorry. Yes.
All good. Just listening.
But I was interested in kind of just before we let you go, mate, like in your sort of take or your feelings on weight cutting and some of the brutalities that it involves sometimes for fighters.
Yeah, the same. I was when I fight in amateur, the same. I didn't have a proper diet. I didn't follow any plan, and I feel very bad in the weight cut. One time I remember, took me 3 hours, 45 minutes to do only 700 grams because I don't follow. I don't special diet. Now I do. Now I follow everything 2-3 weeks. I don't need more than 3 weeks, and I left just for last day 8-9 pounds. But before I do the same 7-8 kilo, and what I feel very bad, very bad. I didn't want strong. I didn't recover properly, and I think this affect. If you will do this in long term, will affect your body. And I prefer to. I know diet is so hard for everyone. I think this is the process. Just the process. The process will kill us, But I prefer to have hard process, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and to don't suffer in the fight. To be good, to be ready, to be strong in the fight. And I think everyone have to follow. To follow. And that's why I'm laughing because I see Tom. I think it was 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Friday night, and he just was flower power, just nothing happening 11 o'clock. And we come from sauna, and I lose 7 pounds. That was 45 minutes, not much, 45 minutes in sauna. And I lose 7 pounds, and I ask him, how much you have to lose tonight? And not much, 10 kilo. What?
I know.
I was complaining. I said, oh, just are too much for me,
Yeah.
And when I 10 kilo, I feel better next minute.
Yeah.
Come on, I have another 2 pounds for only. Easy to do. If Tom have 10 kilo, how much 10 kilo? 25 pounds?
Yeah, a lot of weight, about that.
Yeah. 100% in my mind I'll say Tom will not be able to do it. But when I see him next day, 1 pound extra, just only 1 pound, 24 pounds. Unbelievable. I'm not a complainer anymore.
No.
I stopped complaining about it just cutting weight. If this guy
yeah,
for me 9 pounds would be
yeah,
would be easy. But what
yeah.
effect will affect your body?
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
attitudes towards it as well. I know, Tom kept trying to look at things in a positive light, and I refused. He kept saying, "Hey, Danny, don't worry. The fight's going ahead. How amazing we cut 9.5 kgs." I said, "No, that's not a good thing, Tom. We shouldn't be celebrating you cutting 9.5. It's just not something to celebrate. Sorry, I'm not doing it. But hey, look, we got over it. He come away with a result thanks to his opponent accepting a fight because it's so easy to refuse. But what I like about what you said, George, when I touched on, because I saw you briefly, and I do forgive me that I never spoke to you more. But I'd going through so many emotions with everything that I'd gone through with Tom. And I had other fighters on a fight show that I'd getting the results coming through. So I really didn't get to talk to you like I wanted to. But what I have liked you saying, that the suggestion of you going down a weight, is that you were saying, well, maybe I'll get a fight at 140 and graduate down to see how you feel. I mean, this is so good. Look after your health, because you've only got one body at the end of the day and you have to look after it. And that was quite warming to hear you talking about, dipping your toe, so to speak, into that weight division. See how I feel. It might not be right for you.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm staying, like, to be honest, I'm staying 77, 78. I'm a little fat. I never have six pack, just only the day. I never, but I will see how I feel, because maybe I will not feel great, or maybe just step by step. If I wanted, because I decided to do everything professional. For me, was a fun. In 2 years ago, just fun. I do MMA for fun. Even my amateur fights was for fun. Just enjoy it. I was in the gym. I trained like nearly every day, but 1 week I was in the gym. 1 week now, I do just bad mistake with the process, and this has cost like all my 2-3 fights I lost in amateur, because the process was bad. When I fight with Jimmy Fell, a part of Jimmy Fell, I was sick. I had a flu in that time, and I remember I cut like 4 kilo in 6 hours in sauna, and it was. I was more hot than sauna. I didn't sweat. I got just half an hour. I didn't sweat, and I'm not a complainer anyway. Jack, no. But I prefer to do everything proper, and I have to have a good process before, like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and for next one I try to be less heavy to compete better in the fight.
Right.
Because if you don't lose like match weight, 100% you'll feel amazing in the fight. You'll feel and you'll see the big difference.
Yeah.
Same what happened in first fight. When I lose first fight in Italy, was a long story to say. But I lose weight. I didn't have a sauna there. Was in lockdown. I didn't have a place to cut weight. I dropped to 68 because I left kilo for last day, but we didn't have a bath. We have to run outside just to make the weight. It was bad, but the fuel after weight, it was great, and I feel shit. Say after that fight, I say, nah, I have to do something about it. If I have to lose weight, I will do properly, and I will refuel, because the refuel is more important than lose weight.
Yeah, that's right.
If you don't refuel properly, you will be shit.
Yeah, you stay dehydrated and you got no fuel in your muscles.
Exactly. This is the more important. It's more important than weight. Yeah, it's more important than how you lose. It's more important how you refill. For my opinion, for my body, yeah. If I refuel good, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm start professional to be a professional fighter, I have to be everything professional.
Yeah.
Training hard. Last big change for me.
Yeah. I think professionals these days, when they hit a certain level of professionalism, in terms of their fights and how many fights they've had in their career, there has to come a point where you have it as a lifestyle. It's not like a normal job where you go to work for 8 hours a day with 1 hour break. It's just not like that. It literally is a lifestyle. And this is why, hopefully with the successes you get financially rewarded, and some of the best fighters do, they get paid amply at the top of the game. But it would be nice to see some of that financial support trickle down a little bit better to the fighters through the promotions, but also through sponsorship. I mean, this is something, again, we touched on the podcast. I think it's such a shame, particularly over Europe side of things. Sponsorship is so hard to come by. Whereas stateside in America, they seem to have an abundance of sponsorship, which allows fighters to either go part-time or get subsidized with a salary from the sponsors in a way that they can just invest full training. But a lot of the fighters over here, but they're all working full-time jobs and supporting families and still trying to make, not easy thing to do.
More full-time job, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
I have to pay bills. I'm alone in this country. I'm by myself. I have to pay bills. I have to pay rent. I have to pay everything.
Sure.
And we have to pay gym. We have to pay coaching. I have to pay like food. I have to pay everything. And we dedicate, but sponsorship is a pleasure.
Yeah.
It's good, but the same things with sponsorship. They with you just only when you win.
Yeah.
They run this guy. I have a good sponsorship, to be honest, in my amateur fights. I have just very good sponsorship, but basically just only when you win. When you just run away.
Right.
This guy lost. You are in the business for a long time, and you know how sponsorship work here.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're glad if we have any income from sponsorship. I'm glad every minute.
Of course.
And we say big thanks for every sponsorship. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of them things, isn't it? Where the sponsorship is what enables you to do everything in a professional manner and do everything the right way. I think you're right, Danny. Like in the US, it seems to be a lot easier for fighters to get that kind of sponsorship and that backing. But I don't know whether it's because it's just a bigger place generally. It seems that way, but then I don't know. It's a weird one. Right, George. What we'll do, mate, we'll let you go now. Appreciate your time, mate, massively. And as always, definitely have you back on again soon, mate. Once you get your fight set up, give me a shout, and we'll get you on for a chat. See what your next fight is. But well done, mate. Recover now, and then back in the gym tomorrow.
Yes, George. George, I'll be watching your career closely, and I look forward to seeing you fight again, hopefully real soon. And seems like you're always ready, so you might get that call from Cage Warriors to fight in the next few number of weeks when they put on the next event. I'd love to see you fight again.
Yeah, hope July. I want World Tour. Yeah. It's my dream to fight, dude.
Yeah,
to be honest,
just watch when you do your knees.
Poke the eye. Happening.
Good luck, George.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Cheers,
have a good night. Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Go, George Tanasa. Great stuff. Enjoyed that, mate.
Yes.
And obviously, like George has got someone in Jack Mason behind him who's similar to you, isn't it? About doing things the right way, and I think that drop to 135 will be real good for him. I think.
George is not a massive guy. He's not particularly tall. He's not even particularly big framed. He looks strong. He's definitely an athlete, but I think he could be. He'll be a menace at 135.
Yeah, be a monster, mate.
He'll be a menace.
So Ben's going to join us in about 20 minutes just to talk about Gervonta Davis from last night. Also wanted to say a big congratulations to Lloyd Germain, previous guest, won the Welsh title last night live on BBC. So congratulations to Lloyd. Celebrate, and then back to work. But yeah, that was good to see. It was very impressive performance as well. He was very, very dominant from about the third round onwards.
Really, that's great.
Yeah, it was very, very good. So let's have a little chit chat about the Cage Warriors card. Obviously, we talked about George and Scott Pedersen, which was the first fight last night. The second fight of the night was the return of Oban Elliott versus Herkos Lukasanos. Oban dispatched him with a rear naked choke about 2.5 minutes of the first round.
Yeah,
but it was the strikes which just before the rear naked choke, which really set him up for that. With the speed that choke was on, my father-in-law was like, "Oh, he's nailed him," and then he was like, "Oh, it's over." He choked him out because he was so quick. He hit him with a combination, and then he was, it was there. It was
got
done.
Underneath him with the takedown, didn't he?
Beautifully done, yeah. But
yeah, it was a great win for Oban, and I can't remember whether he was on air or off air. I think it was off air just at the beginning, talking about him being up at this weight, and about him possibly being a title contender. I would like to see him have 2 more fights at this weight, and notch up 2 more wins and actually have trajectory with results, because he won, then he lost, then he won again, and so on. I'd like to see him be able to not have the pressure of like, I've lost, I've got to get a win. I don't want him to have that pressure. I think Oban, you'll see a different Oban once he knocks up a string of wins, which I feel fairly confident that he will do. I think he'd become a whole lot more dangerous version of Oban Elliott. I just got the sense that he was really waiting for the right time, which isn't the wrong thing to do, but I felt like he was really just waiting on it a little bit. I think Oban's at his best when he just triggers and goes. But he did it good. He waited and bided his time, and when he went, it got over very, very quickly thereafter. I just want to see a few more fights, a few more wins from him before he starts stepping up for any kind of title talk. That's just how I see it. I mean,
I think I got to say, I kind of agree. 2 fights probably the way to go. I see a lot of people saying he should be, going for the title next fight. I don't think that's realistic, because I would like to see him have 1 more fight against, whoever, and then I wouldn't be against rematching him with Flaminas, because I think Flaminas obviously won that fight. He caught Oban and he finished it with like a mount. But I think Oban is capable of beating Flaminas on his day. He's got everything right and in place, and I believe that maybe that would be the direction that they may go. I'm not saying they will go. I think that might be the direction that Cage Warriors would like to take it. If he goes, if Oban wins his next fight against X, and then they rematch him against Flaminas, and he was to beat him, then you can kind of put him in the title picture, I think. But
yeah, it'd be interesting to know what he thinks about that actual choice of route himself. That would be kind of interesting, or indeed what Richard Shaw would think about perhaps taking him down that route. But yeah, I can understand your logic in that sort of approach for him. It wouldn't be a bad route to go through, to be honest. We just have to watch this space.
That division's quite busy, isn't it? There's a few guys knocking around. I was happy for him, and I was impressed by his performance most of all. But I was happy for him as well, because I think he had looked so dominant for so long in the amateurs, and then into the he won the Cage Warriors Grand Prix, and he had done well on the academy shows and this, that, and the other. And then as he'd kind of come into Cage Warriors, he'd won 3 on the bounce. He beat James Lilly. And then obviously when he came up against Mike Figlak, he had the issues with the weight, and during the weight cut. Then he had a couple of fights which were cancelled. Then he beat George McManus in back here, I think it was Cage Warriors 127 or 126. He looked really, really good in that fight, and it was like, he's back. He's put the Figlak loss behind him and the weight cut, and he's up at welterweight. and then he came up against Freminas, who's a very, very good fighter. Got caught. So then it was going to be interesting to see what would progress next. And I thought last night he was very good, very impressive.
Yes.
But also on the other hand, I don't think Herkos is anywhere near the level of Freminas either. So
no, it's not.
I think
it was a good matchup for Oban.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Obviously a discussed route to expand his experiences with Richard. So I think it was a good call, good fight to get him back feeling good with wins. I wanted to keep that trajectory going, like I say, because if he gets, say, 2 more fights, 2 more wins, that puts him at 7-2. He starts looking strong again, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Then we had next up was Orlando Prince with Tom Mearns. We obviously discussed that. And then we had Luke Shanks versus Josh Reed at bantamweight. I was really looking forward to this fight, but I was also really apprehensive about this fight because I really like both guys.
Of course, I had the same.
I had them both on a couple of times, and I really like them both. And I wasn't sure how I was going to get on watching these because it's sometimes a bit of apprehension there, but we kind of know what Josh is going to do. Like Josh is very much like he's got the ability to grapple and wrestle, but he so often ends up in these like walls, similar to Tom. Like they both got the ability to grapple and wrestle quite at a high level, but they seem to always end up having these crazy stand and bangs. And he tried to stand and bang with Luke. He did get caught by one. And then Luke was so fast on that rear naked choke. He flipped around the back of him and it was just done. And it was Luke. Look, Luke has looked a different animal since he had that weight issue. He came back. He beat Sam very well. And then he's obviously gone up against Josh Reed at bantamweight.
Yeah.
And obviously no issues with the weight or anything there now because he's gone up a weight. And he looked good. Obviously, it was a short fight, but you got to do what you got to do. And I thought Luke looked impressive. I'd be interested. Do you think he stays at bantamweight, mate, or do you think he go back down to fly?
I'd like to see him fight again at bantamweight, to be honest. Not to say that it's something that would be thrown out the window for him to go down a weight again, but he has options right at the minute. I think if he could get his lifestyle. Again, this is really getting sponsors that can support you so you can be a full-time athlete. You know, he was telling me his difficulties at not having to work, and it was very difficult to get his nutrition.
As well, doesn't he?
That's right. Yeah, he's doing door work and things like that. And of course, you're awake all during the night. There's no access to food. I don't think he has the home skills to cook for himself. So trying to get your nutritional aspects in order, which is a must-have for cutting weight in the correct way, very, very difficult for him. So if he could get proper support in that way, of course I would want to see him go down the weight where I think he'll be a big man pushing people around in that division. So he's naturally probably not not so as well suited at bantamweight. But I think after watching him last night, I think he could still be potentially really, really effective. So, look, don't fix what ain't broken. If he carries on getting fights and carries on getting wins, stay at this weight. And if he starts hitting the wall where he reaches that level where it's looking like size is going to be the issue on why he can't go taking title or getting any title contention at that weight, he has the option to go back down, right? But I think stay at this weight just for now. But just keep your options open for either or way, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it did look good. And I feel a little bit for Josh Reed because we had him on the show and a really likable young lad. I sort of stayed out his way and let him focus with his team. Just give him a little nod and that when I saw him. But Luke Shanks, obviously, he's a long-time friend of mine. He was hanging out with us a lot around the hotel and stuff like that. But again, I was watching it with a soft heart for both of them. I thought, let's just let the best man win. And it just looked like Luke was just more experienced, really. But Luke does have some nice skills. There's a few things that I don't like about his game in the striking, although he's quite an effective striker. Does sometimes drop his hands to his waist with the opposite arm that he ain't striking with. That can leave him open to being countered, although that's largely not happened too much in his career. But it's something that I'd like to see him fix. But he's just so tenacious with the way he strikes, and did show some very, very nice head movement. Now, to get effective head movement and slip shots and land shots of your own, you have to have your feet underneath you and have good balance. He seems to have sorted out some of the balance issues he was having previously, which was to lean over his lead foot when he strikes, would strike off balance, for which you could get really devastatingly countered. This is an issue that I do have, or did have, on occasions with Tom Mearns. Tom Mearns doesn't have the longest reach in the world, and sometimes would stretch and reach his shots and lean over his lead foot, and it's never a good idea. It's something that I had to correct in the fight and tell him to bring his feet in, and for which he did respond to. It just looked like he just had the edge on Reed in each and every area, and Reed almost doubted himself as well. I could see the doubt in his face expressions that perhaps he felt like he couldn't beat Luke. It's just it's a too big a challenge at that point of his career. But look, he'll bounce back from it without a doubt. I'm sure Richard Shaw will give him a pep talk and know how to direct him for here on out, and we'll see him come back strong.
Absolutely. I wanted to, just before we talk about that main event fight, the shout out to Australian fighter, I think it's Jordan Becker. He's Jack Becker, sorry, one of the most highly rated Australian fighters around. He was being prepped for UFC. I think he was going to be on a Contender Series soon.
Right.
Looked really impressive. And he fought on a Eternal MMA, which is like an Australian, like a regional show or a local show, like similar to Cage Warriors, I'd assume. And he hit a low kick on his opponent and his leg just snapped.
I haven't seen that. Ooh.
Yeah, like it was really, really violent.
He
just checked his kick.
Was it the kicker? Was it the kicker who got his leg broke, or was it
the
blocker?
The kicker. The guy checked his kick and his leg just went.
That's happening just a little too often for my liking in MMA.
Yeah, there's like
it's strange.
What happens though, isn't it, when you're kicking shin to knee and shin to shin, and
you don't get this in Thai boxing though, and
I'd strengthen it up by kicking logs.
It's not just that. I think it's more of a case that the stance in MMA is a little different. You're a little wider and you're a little longer because of the threat of a takedown. The distance before you strike is a little larger, and we're fighting in a cage, which is effectively a circle. You're not getting cornered in a ring, so to speak. So I think that because that range is a little longer, when you throw your kick and they're shin blocking further down your leg. And of course, further you go down your shin bone, the thinner and smaller the bone is, the further higher up that you block that kick coming in up your leg, the more near the growth plate it is, the more solid and dense the bone is, and hence you're getting your leg breaks. I just think perhaps ain't seeing that in K1 and Thai because they stand a little closer together. Yeah. That's sort of like my thought process in why we're seeing only leg breaks in MMA.
So the main event, mate, last night was highly touted James Webb fighting Leon Aliu at middleweight. It didn't go James Webb's way, which I think surprised a few people. I'd heard someone, I can't remember who it was, someone told me last week after the show after we did the show that this Aliu was quite good.
Right.
I had never seen him fight, and I gotta be honest, I hadn't heard of him. He just caught James Webb with a big shot, and it was done. Like it was one. I know he hit him with a couple of hammer fists after, but it was that one shot which it just cleaned him out. And he just before it, he hit a couple of low kicks to the stomach, and he went for a spinning back elbow and missed. But then the kicks to the belly just before seemed to wake James Webb up a little bit, and he came forward, and then he got hit with I think 3 or 4 low leg kicks, not damaging leg kicks, but it was as if he was just trying to, Aliu was just trying to set him up for these wild swings.
Right.
And then, he just, as it progresses, he does it again, and he just catches James with a...
Yeah, I saw the way it ended, and I was shocked. I was sort of like in the crowd at that point, sort of half watching, half not, but I was watching at the point when it all unfolded. It's a brutal knockout, and you're right. The first punch was really enough for the ref to have intervened, but before the ref could get intervened, he received that nasty hammer fist as well, right at the front of his face. And James Webb was in a bad way, although not unconscious. He weren't himself because he started trying to grapple with Mark Goddard. Started trying to waist grab him. You're not
when you're trying to take the ref down.
But James Webb was preparing really, really well in the warm-up room. I was in the room when he was preparing, very, very confident, strutting it about. A man with some attitude, I suppose, is a good way to describe him. Whether that's just his war dance before he goes out, and whether that's just his personality in general, but he just seemed a very, very confident individual backstage. And I thought, I think James Webb, from what I was witnessing, was going to run through the guy. But one thing we can safely say about MMA, there's no guaranteed predictions, is there? And this Leon now is someone that we got to look out for, because I think he's got good overall record now.
Big power, he just looks quite a dangerous fighter. He's got that knockout power, which not all fighters have got, but
no.
Be interesting when he goes. So to finish off the show this evening, we're going to talk some boxing. I'm delighted to be welcomed by Mr. Ben Doherty. Thank you for joining us, mate. Really appreciate you jumping on. So last night I was watching 4 different sporting events at the same time. We were watching the Champions League final. We were watching the boxing on BBC Wales. We were watching Cage Warriors on the UFC. And then there was obviously the Gervonta Davis fight later on. I'm assuming you didn't watch the boxing on BBC Wales, Ben, as you're not based in the Welsh Valleys like myself.
No, I didn't. I was aware of it, and I know that you could probably stream it, I'd imagine, somehow these days. But I didn't see the Welsh show, no.
No, so Lloyd Germain, who we had on the show a few weeks or a few months back probably now, picked up the Welsh title. Really impressive, actually. I think he had the first 2 rounds or 3 rounds were quite close. And then after that, I thought he pretty much dominated the rest of the fight, which was nice to see a former guest pick up some gold. But the Gervonta Davis versus Rolando Romero fight in New York was an interesting one to me, because Gervonta Davis marches on. He won again. And you put up a video, which I think it was from like ringside, but it wasn't, like a TV camera as such. It was someone filming it on their phone. And what really struck me about the finish, Ben, was the speed at which Gervonta Davis knocked, like I don't know how to explain it, but like just a split second of Romero striking him, and then it was done. Like how quick Gervonta Davis was.
Beautiful counter, It was like a left hook counter from the southpaw position, and because of him being a southpaw facing up like this with a lead hand here. Although I think we're in reverse here, aren't we? No, we've got it right actually. So then he throws the left hook counter, then pivots out, so he kind of darts out diagonally and winds up the other side of Romero as he's falling, which was beautiful. It was. I think Davis had said that somebody ringside or near ringside was telling him to step it up, and he was because the commentators remarked he was talking to somebody off stage at certain points, and he was saying no, not yet, because the guy's very strong, because he looked massive, didn't he, Romero, in comparison to
he did look very big.
And he said that he felt the guy's strength and power, and he knew it wasn't time to trade with him or to try and take him out. He's a very smart fighter as well as immensely talented, Gervonta Davis. So he kind of picked his moment, picked his spot. I mean, I think, obviously after the fight, Romero was saying that he was winning the fight. He won all those rounds, which I don't think is true. But they need to run it back because he wants a rematch. I mean, he talked his way into the first fight. Now he's trying to talk his way into a rematch. But I think, despite Romero appearing to do quite well and press the action and put pressure on, I think there was always that sense he was going to walk onto something, and he did.
I mean, yeah, Gervonta Davis is his record. Like when I was surprised actually. Because I am familiar with him. I know I watched some of his fights before, but I wasn't quite aware that he was 27 and 0. Like I didn't realize quite he'd had that many fights. That's an impressive record in any walk of combat sports. At the end of the day, like you don't get that from not being an extremely talented and clever fighter.
Do you want me to put the lie to that statement?
Yes,
do you want me to come up with a bunch of guys who went like Ali Cassius Clay in his 7th pro fight fought a guy called Lamar Clark, who'd had about 45 KOs out of about 46 fights. I think he'd lost 145, scored 44 knockouts, somewhere in the region of that, and he beat a bunch of truck drivers, and the young Clay, who was obviously a little bit warm, took him out in 2 rounds, at age like 19. But so I think what records in boxing can be very disingenuous. They just can be. But Tanks is not. I mean, some people say it's a shame he appears to be avoiding the total top tier competition, and that some people blame Floyd Mayweather, Mayweather Promotions TMT for that. Who he said he was going after this fight, and now he might have changed his mind. He might be staying. So it's a question of will he stay or will he go? But Tank, I mean, he's obviously. See, the shame for me is the way it was billed for a World Lightweight Championship of sorts, the WBA regular title as it was. When you've got Kambosos and Haney fighting for what is really regarded to be the legitimate lightweight championship of the world, more or less undisputed next weekend. But someone was arguing with me just the other day. No, I think Tank is the real champion because he's the best. But it's become so. I understand his logic, but for me, it doesn't work that way. Just because somebody happens to think you're the best out there, Yeah. I think that is the problem with boxing in general, and that's what it reminded me of because Showtime last night they were covering it and just talking like it was the only world championship that existed at 135 pounds, and literally not even bringing you up to date with the picture. They're just pushing the house fight, saying this is for Davis's lightweight championship of the world, which for me is not. Do you know Davis even picked up a portion of the light welterweight title after Josh Taylor had unified the damn thing, literally unified, beyond any argument, and then next minute. There's some subdivision of the either WBC or the WBA title that Davis ended up winning at 140. So for me, he's not a 3-weight world champion, but I think he is a special guy, and he might be the best lightweight in the world. He might be the best out of all of them, So I think there's reasons to be upbeat about him in every sense.
If you could match Davis against any other lightweight or any other boxer, who would you like to see him fight?
I'd like to see him fight the winner of next Saturday, where you've got George Kambosos, who beat, Teofimo Lopez, who had beaten Vasily Lomachenko. Those guys are going to fight next weekend down under. Very interesting fight. And most people fancy Haney, but not. He's only a 6-4 favourite, and I think that seems to be the perception in the game, as well as the money that's obviously being laid reflecting that. But also, Ryan Garcia was there last night. He lost 20 grand, didn't he? He bet Errol Spence on camera that Romero would win. So, and I think I see him looking like he might have had a few beers as well, a few Miller Lights, saying, "I'll pay you tomorrow," which he will, no doubt, because I'm sure it's dropping the ocean to Ryan Garcia. But I'd like to see him fight Garcia too, because they were talking that fight up afterwards. He said, "Let me take care of business on July 16th, where he has a date." And then he says, after that, let's get it in December. Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis. It sounds like fun to me if it comes off.
That sounds like a very fun fight. I made a little note. I wanted to ask you about Kambosos. Obviously fighting late next week, but I've seen a lot of people kind of almost writing off his victory against TFO as like a fluke almost, and as if it, that doesn't make him the best his weight class or whatever. And I almost feel like it's a bit disingenuous because, like, you can only beat what's in front of you. You can only beat the people who will agree to fight you and so on. And he won. He did it was an incredible performance. He deserved to win. And it's like, I don't know, for some reason people don't seem to be giving him perhaps the credit I feel he deserves. So I just wondered your take on it, really.
Yeah, it's almost like Buster Douglas syndrome, if you will, that he's been tarred with ahead of time. Because I hate this cliche, but he did beat the man who beat the man. Teofimo Lopez beat Vasyl Lomachenko, who Matthew Macklin was saying might be the greatest fighter in history at one point, after he beat Luke Campbell at the O2 back in 2019, I believe it was. So, Lomachenko was looking extremely formidable and very special, and people were saying, despite the brevity of his stats, he was an all-time great as it stood. Lopez beat him pretty handily. I mean, then we got the excuses that, the caveat that Lomachenko was nursing a shoulder injury, which might have been true. But, Kambosos beat him in a classic, an absolute classic. And he deserves his props for that. I think the thing is, you need to see someone do that again and perform consistently like that. When Kambosos said afterwards that he was the greatest ever Australian fighter, and with all due respect to Jeff Fenwick, that's not fair and that's not true. That's not fair to Jeff Fenwick, because you need to do it more than just once. I think it's a bit like Bivol, isn't it? He didn't inherit Canelo's position as regarded as the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And Bivol being a very nice, lovely, reasonable, self-effacing bloke, he agrees with that. He said, I don't think I inherited his number one position just because I beat him. I think I need more big names, which is a wonderfully refreshing thing to hear from a protagonist. Yeah. But I think that's the thing with Kambosos. You can't say he's the greatest Australian fighter off the back of that, but you can say he's the legitimate lightweight champion of the world, as near as damn it. And is Haney that much of the real deal? That Kambosos, with the confidence he'd have got last time out as well, he's fighting at home, which we can never underestimate the importance of that in boxing, as you know. So I think it's a tight. Haney might be more talented, he might have more tools, and he might have the right style to outbox Kambosos, which Teofimo Lopez perhaps didn't have. But I think like you say, there seems to be this suggestion that Kambosos boxed great, boxed out of his skin, and it's all power to him, but he won't beat any of the other big guns at lightweight. That's what people seem to think. They back Haney against him. They would back Davis against him, and I reckon they'll probably back Lomachenko against him, and perhaps some people might even back Lopez in a rematch against him, although I'm not sure what Lopez intends to do going forward. But I agree with you. I think we'll know more about Kambosos for sure after Saturday, because if he can beat Haney, that's a major consolidation of his position and confirmation that he's the best lightweight in the world. And who's to say he won't do it? Like I say, he's fighting in Australia, so that's quite a big deal, isn't it? And Haney is not. Is Haney that kind of fighter, that special fighter who can go to the other man's backyard and do a number on him? We'll see.
Indeed. Ben, I'm going to ask you a question. It might be a really ignorant question, and boxing fans might get annoyed with me. I know it's in the, on the BBC, it says George Kambosos versus Devin Haney for the WBC, IBF, WBA Super, WBO, and the Ring Magazine lightweight title. What's the Ring Magazine lightweight title?
The Ring Magazine title, it's the Ring Magazine belt, which was inaugurated. I don't know when they started. I should know, shouldn't I? I feel embarrassed whenever I don't know anything like this. But I'm not sure what year, and I will check, that Ring Magazine started awarding their own championship belt to what they regarded as the best fighter in each division. But it definitely goes back to the 40s. You know what? It goes back to It goes back definitely to 1938, because I remember Henry Armstrong. I don't remember it. I wasn't alive then. No. But I do remember seeing a picture of Henry Armstrong being awarded the Ring Magazine welterweight, featherweight and welterweight belts. Because Armstrong won the featherweight title when it was undisputed. Then he won the welterweight. Then he dropped back down and won the lightweight. And he held them all simultaneously until they decided it was a bit unfair, because then he fought for the middleweight title too after that, by the way, and he drew. And a lot of people thought he was robbed. At that point, there was only 8 divisions, and he'd have held literally 50% of all the world titles which are available at the time, which would be mind-boggling when you look at the amount of world titles available today. But I remember him getting awarded it in 1938 because of the picture of Nat Fletcher giving him those belts. So they've been around a very long time. Ring Magazine has been one of the giants of boxing reportage. It's not the oldest boxing magazine in the world, because Boxing News, Britain's Boxing News, is. But it wasn't. It came around, I think, 1920, around about 1921, Ring Magazine first came out. So there's always been a lot of credence and credibility attached to the Ring Magazine belt. A lot of people, you could normally look at the ring champion, not always, but most of the time, you'll say that's the real guy. And if someone has that, they have at least that gravitas in the, as far as boxing aficionados and boxing fans are concerned. You know, they don't. The belt has no leverage beyond its critical acclaim, but that's quite important when you're trying to swing from the chaff. Yeah, so that's what it is.
Excellent. And to say what, Ben, right, as you were talking about it, and you were just like remembering the date and stuff, I was bringing it up on my screen, on my other screen, and you got all the dates right, which is, I don't know why I should be quite surprised by that.
Yeah,
but although the Ring, it says, according to Wikipedia, it says the Ring magazine was founded, or the belt and the magazine was founded in 1922. But
I was literally about to say 1922, not 1921, because I've got the first issue. I don't have the first issue, but I've got a kind of reproduction of the first issue somewhere where the guy on the cover of it, I believe, was Tex Rickard and Lord Lonsdale, I think, were on the cover of the first Ring magazine ever in 1922, you know. And I have something amongst my massive stack of magazines in the bedroom, which denotes that first issue somewhere.
Incredible. I like little I like collectibles like that myself. That's the sort of thing I would be getting. I'm just looking at. I get sidetracked now by looking at all the different ringside divisions and the current champions and stuff.
18 divisions now, right? Because we've got Bridgerweight as well, according to WBC. We have 18 championship divisions, or 18 divisions in boxing. We have at least, I believe, last time I counted, there was about 68 world champions, not including the women. And not including IBO champions or anything other than the big four.
Yeah, that's unreal, isn't it? It's But I do like the thought that there's one belt that kind of people regard as the genuine best in the world, whether it's the Ring magazine one or whatever. I like that.
I think the Ring one is the one that would have that credibility, because some people say the WBC, of course, but for me that doesn't pass muster anymore, because if you look at some of the champions across the board at different times over the last 20 years, even the WBC don't have that claim, that first refusal on credibility, because sometimes the WBO champion's been the best, because a lot of people lazily thinking, they say, well, the WBO came more recently, so they're the least credible, and it goes like that. But it's just not that way. And, the oldest sanctioning body of all of them is the WBA, and they're the worst of the lot, because they are the most cynically replicating of all the bodies, just purely in pursuit of sanction fees. They're the ones who will have an interim champion, a regular champion in almost every weight division. So the WBA are terrible, I think.
Well, funny enough, I was going to ask you which one you think is either the worst or the least meaningful sort of.
You can't say the WBA are meaningful, because they have been around since 1963, but their forerunner, which was the New York State, not the New York State, the NBA, the National Boxing Association, went back to 1921 before it morphed into the WBA. So they've been around too long to be called meaningless. But they're just the most disingenuous and the most cynical. They're the ones who started recognising 3 world champions in their own divisions. That they would have as a matter of routine, interim, regular, and super. Just because I get it. If you were trying to create as much revenue for yourselves, you create as many brands as you get. It's like McDonald's, isn't it, Sam? We've got a Big Mac, we've got the Mega Mac, we've got the Big Tasty, we've got the Big Tasty of bacon and cheese. It's no different to that. But I've always felt there's got to be, I get the fact that everybody needs to eat and live and make money, and there's nothing wrong. You shouldn't be ashamed of being wealthy and successful. And fighters definitely need the money, and they deserve the money for the sacrifices they're making, the risks they take. But I just think we need some integrity somewhere. And to the best of my knowledge, they have it in a lot of other sports. They wouldn't have this in football, would they? They just wouldn't have it. I'm not a football expert, because I put all my energy and passion into boxing, and the price I pay is I'm quite ignorant on quite a lot of topics because of that. But from what I understand, you wouldn't get like something like the World Cup as prestigious as that. They wouldn't bastardize it the way that we've done in boxing. They just wouldn't do it.
Absolutely not. No. So there's like the cream of the crop is the cream of the crop. So whoever.
And there's big money involved in that, right, Simon? There's massive money. It's bigger than boxing, yeah? So the argument that insiders always use is yes, but it's better because it creates more revenue, and that's why we've got this, and I'm okay with all the titles. That doesn't pass muster, does it? Because probably the most popular sport in the Western world and the most commercial one still has those lines of integrity which boxing lost a long time ago.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you look and you go across the pond to America and North America and Canada, like basketball and American football, they all end with one champion, this team is the best.
There's some kind of merit-based thing going on. There's some kind of meritocracy going on. We're not going to say it's not influenced by money, and we know in football, if you can afford to buy the best players in the world, that's great. But there at least is a kind of meritocracy. Whereas boxing, it just makes no sense whatsoever. It literally makes no sense, because when that guy was saying to me, he thought that, because this is it. People on my page are saying Rolly Romero hasn't fought anybody. He just talked his way into this fight, and this guy is a proper boxing man. He had a bunch of amateur fights, and he saw Muhammad Ali fight 4 times. So he's not a mug, and he knows his stuff, and he's passionate as hell. He must be getting on for 60 or 70 at this point. But he was saying, what you don't seem to be realising is that Romero is the number 1 contender. And I said, are you kidding me? The number 1 contender for the the regular strap. This is not a legitimate lightweight title fight, and Davis is not a legitimate lightweight world champion. But he spins it around on me and says, no, I think he's the best. And, who's this other guy? Cambosis is a club fighter, which is obviously a bit strong. But yeah, the conclusion I reached when having this discussion with him, even though I still agree with myself rather than him, is that it's very hard to make an argument now, because every parameter that existed in boxing in terms of anything qualitative as a yardstick has been so kind of second-guessed, reinvented and bastardized that it's very difficult to argue on any grounds. It's the same thing with Tyson Fury. Is he the real heavyweight champion of the world, or is it Alexander Usyk? You can make an argument for either one of them, and until they fight and resolve it, which they may never do, because Fury might be retiring, all the rest of it. What I realise is you can argue forever, but they've messed around with it so much that almost none of it means anything, if that makes sense. And it would be great if we just got rid of the whole lot of them and started from scratch again.
Yeah, I could 100% see the argument for just scrapping it all and having one champion in each weight, and then that's it. Right. Before we wrap up, Ben, and before I let Danny ask you a question before we go, because I have no doubt he's got one.
I have.
Just wanted to, next weekend we've got Joe Cordina fighting Agawa for the IBF Super Featherweight title, and obviously, as we mentioned, George Kambosos fighting Devin Haney. I just wanted to get your prediction really on who you think will win those 2 fights.
I think I've got a sneaking feeling for Haney on points, but we cannot rule out controversy. I have a feeling Haney will get the decision over there, but it will be controversial in some quarters. That's my feeling. It's not a strong pick. I wouldn't put the farm on it. But I'm going to go with Haney on points, with controversy almost certainly attached to it. Cordina, I think it's a good time for him to. I haven't seen a lot of the Japanese guy. I will watch some more between now and the fight next weekend. But Cordina, I think, on his home ground, right place, right time. I haven't actually looked at the betting odds for this one, by the way, either. But I will go with Cordina to triumph, probably on points as well.
Yeah, interesting. Right then, Danny, you got one question to ask to Mr. Ben Doherty. We
had an interesting topic that's come up numerous times in MMA. I had several students competing at the weekend, and the student that I was with cut 10 kilos to make the 66 weight limit. So he's walking around at 76 kilos. Way too much weight in my mind and many minds. I'm sure that's too much to lose in one night before the weigh-in day in the morning. Now, boxing has many more weight divisions than MMA does. There's smaller increments dividing those weight divisions. So would I be correct in saying that weight cutting is done on a lot lesser scale in boxing? Is it and is that bearing? Is it an advantage to try to come in 2 kilos heavier? Is that bearing on the match or not really?
I think you know what I mean. That 10 kilos, while it's insane, and I say that boxers don't tend to do that quite so severely. There's still some crazy stories out there, and there's still people who are balling down. I know Gervonta Davis doesn't like to make his weight literally till about the last week, because what he said is, and he definitely intends to rehydrate and come in a lot bigger, because he said he doesn't like to stay at what he called that low weight for very long. So he likes to do it the last week. So boxers do severely crash it. 10 kilos is really something in 24 hours. But, you know, that is mind-boggling. But fighters do too severely and dangerously. As I said, if you look at Rolly Romero when he got in that ring last night or in the small hours of this morning for us Brits, he looked like a middleweight, you know, certainly like a light middleweight. I mean, he had to be 154 pounds, having weighed in at 155. I swear to God, which is, you know, that's an increase. It's almost like a £20 increase. That's my estimation, by the way. He looked massive. Fighters definitely do it. You know, it is not beyond the realm of possibility or regularity for a fighter to weigh in at 140 and come in the night at 160. I think it is an advantage, obviously, you know. I think it is. See, we used to have same-day weigh-ins in boxing until at some point, I think, in the 90s. Certainly, Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn, when they fought the first time in September 1990, Ben somehow, don't ask me how, he ended up coming in. They had a check weigh-in in the morning before he had to weigh in on the day of the fight. He had to weigh in lunchtime, yeah? He put him on the scales in the morning, and he was 5.5 pounds over the middleweight limit, which is, I don't know how they'd let that situation go unmonitored. There's an interesting theory that Ambrose Mendy had, that what caused his water retention, as he put it. It involves some kind of blonde groupie, a champagne bottle, and a bunch of things. But so he had to lose all that weight by lunchtime and then go and fight that night. So they changed the rule, not because of Nigel Benn, but because of situations like that. They changed the rule at some point in the 90s to say you can weigh in the day before. So it gives fighters like about 36 hours to rehydrate before the first bell rings. It was supposed to be in the interest of safety, but as you know, whenever there's an advancement in the name of safety, people start looking at exploiting the loopholes that it leaves.
Sure.
And the obvious margin it left was for people to come in 12 times the size of God the next day. When they were, I mean, I remember, you know, talking of a Welsh guy for Simon's benefit, Gary Lockett, and I think I mentioned this to you on another show. Yeah. He said he saw Kelly Pavlik, you know, at the weigh-in looking all gaunt and irritable and just drained. And then he said he saw him the next day in the restaurant, you know, around about lunchtime, and he said it was chilling. He said he looked twice the fucking size of the man I'd seen the day before. He said I could not believe it, and it did fuck with my head. So, you know, I mean, I think we should possibly look at going back to same-day weigh-ins, because people say, well, that was dangerous. Some people were balling down really dangerously, and then they didn't get time to protect the brain a bit more and put a bit of fluid back in there. But if we have the check weigh-ins that we have anyway now, as long as we monitor that situation, how they're making weight in the day, surely that would be better. We could just monitor them throughout, and because people shouldn't be putting on 20 pounds between the weigh-in and the fight, they just shouldn't.
No, and I think me and Danny talked earlier in the show, so I don't want to sort of retread the same conversation to finish, but like losing 10 kilograms in a day it's just not healthy. No matter how you look at it, it's not healthy. It's not good for you, especially if you're then going to go and get punched around in the head. So
yeah, I mean, everyone I perhaps didn't see or hear what we was talking about. You know, I definitely don't condone losing that amount. Well, I was not a happy coach. That I had this situation on my hands, and it was a horrific experience. You know, just to know. But I just didn't know whether that goes on in boxing. Yeah,
the answer is yes, but I think MMA probably is more severe, and because you pointed out that the divisions they've got bigger gaps between. You've got less divisions, and I know your divisions are heavier. I know your featherweights are heavier than our featherweights, and so on. I know that they're just bigger, which is the argument. I think is it's more calibrated towards the size of the modern men, the MMA categories. But it does go on in boxing, but I think MMA might even have an even crazier case of it from what I've heard. Because I never even heard the term weight cut until MMA fighters came on the scene. We used to call it making the weight. The weight cut, that's a term that definitely seems to come from MMA. And it carries with it that sense of even more urgency and something getting a bit more radical. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think a lot of this traditionally come from the wrestling. I think, you know, the wrestlers do some incredible feats with their weight cuts. And I think it crossed over into the MMA. Yeah. You know, it really influenced the MMA.
Yeah. And then spilled into boxing a bit. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting.
Crazy stuff. Right. we'll call it there for this evening. Coming up on 2 hours nearly, so it's a nice one. We've had lots to talk about. Thank you to George Tanasa earlier who joined us. Thank you to you, Danny, as always, mate. And of course, thank you to Ben for slipping in at the end and giving us some phenomenal information. Still amazed by the ability to reel off those dates.
Every time.
That's why we like him. Cheers, Ben. Appreciate your time, mate.
See you soon.
Thank
Good
you.
luck, Ben.
Take it easy, my friends. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.